Hello and welcome to the Miles Irvin Show. I'm your host, Miles, and this is episode 3 of the Over Under series. This is a series where I take a look at every team's projected win totals for the upcoming NBA season, and I determine whether I think they will win more games or less games. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the Central Division. Now, the Central Division has a lot of, teams, a variety of teams, teams that are contending for a title, teams that are, still rebuilding, have a good solid young core, and a team that's right in the middle of all that. So let's just get into all that. But before we do, like I say at the beginning of all these videos, if you would like, leave a comment with your predictions for all these teams. I always love reading the feedback and reading your guys' predictions. And these are very, very difficult for these teams. I'm excited to see what you guys think. So let's just get right into it now with the Central Division. So here are the 5 teams. We've got the Bulls, the Cavs, Pistons, Pacers, and Bucks. So let's get started with the Chicago Bulls at 36.5 wins. Now, a lot of the things that I'm going to be saying about the Bulls are also applicable to the Toronto Raptors, because those are the 2 teams to me in the Eastern Conference that are the definition of mid. They're right in the middle. They're not good enough to win a title, but they're not bad enough to tank for a draft pick. They're just right in the middle. Now, this is a team that I believe, along with the Raptors, should have blown it up this offseason. And this upcoming season, I think that they should look to do that at the deadline. But I believe personally that there's a much higher chance that Toronto moves their key players than Chicago, because Chicago's players are more locked up for long term. And frankly, I just think they have better core players than the Raptors. So this is a team that I could see winning regular season games and getting into that playoff picture. Now, no Lonzo Ball still is definitely a big loss. He's not going to play the rest of the season. I really hope that he could find his way back onto an NBA court regularly again, because it's crazy to think, like, we hear all about the LeVar Ball, and he was so hyped up coming out of UCLA and, of course, with the Lakers. And he developed into one of the most valuable players in the league. Not an MVP of the league, but like most valuable pieces in the league. I don't know exactly how to word it without saying MVP, but like he is a super vital piece to this Bulls team. Before he went injured, they were one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference back in 2022. And since then, they just have not been as good. They have been a very mid team. So I think that, they definitely can still win some, a decent amount of games, in this season. I personally think they're going to go below, because I hope that they, blow it up in the middle of the season, because I want to see Zach LaVine on a team where he can have a chance to win, a championship, because, the Bucks series 2 years ago, that's the only playoff series that he's played in, and this is going to be his 10th year in the NBA. It's crazy to already think that this is going to be his 10th season in the league. DeMar DeRozan, I'd like to see him on a contender. He could help, a team with his elite scoring ability. Vucevic is a solid center. And I would like to see Patrick Williams be able to have more freedom to show off his skills. I mean, he has a lot of potential. Still a former number 4 overall pick. Good defensive instincts and can shoot the ball, a little bit, but has not gotten the chance to really show off his, his abilities yet, because he's always, the fourth option in that starting 5. And of course, you look at the point guard position, it's all just solid role players, but nothing crazy. I mean, Ayo Dosunmu, Alex Caruso, Kobe White, Javon Carter, like, there's nothing crazy. It's nothing crazy. When you look across the league and you look at starting point guards, the Bulls point guards, whoever you would put on that starting lineup, would definitely rank near the bottom, if not the bottom. I may do a point guard tier ranking list in a later date, but I believe that the Bulls will go under, mainly because I hope that they do, but I definitely can see a world where they go over if they keep their players, because their core star guys of LaVine, DeRozan, and Vucevic is still good enough to win you some regular season games. Now on to my favorite team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, at 50.5 wins, and this is such a good number to put them at because, I mean, you can make a case for either way, like with all these teams, but specifically for the Cavs at 50.5 wins. This is a team that has a lot to prove heading into next season after the utter embarrassment in the playoffs to the New York Knicks. Their biggest weakness in that series, of course, besides experience and the physicality, which I think will come, with more experience, specifically from Evan Mobley. That was his first playoff appearance, just his second season. But their biggest weakness is obviously the lack of three-point shooting. Besides, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, and Karis LeVert specifically last year, they didn't really have a lot of above average like NBA level shooters. Like they would rely on like Jetty Osman to be their spark plug sharp shooter off the bench, and that's not going to do you much good. So they addressed that by acquiring Max Strus and signing Georges Niang, which are two great additions. Those are two guys that can shoot the ball at an elite level in the NBA. And, they're also guys that know how to fit around other great players. Like you look at Max Strus, of course, was just in the NBA Finals with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. And Georges Niang was just on the Sixers with Joel Embiid and James Harden. So I think that those additions are great. But when you look at their rotation, they still aren't the deepest team. Their starting five is, of course, you got the core four of Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen. I think they're going to go with Strus at the three. You could still go Karis LeVert. You could still go with Isaac Okoro. It's really whatever JP Bickerstaff may be feeling on that night. But their bench is not deep whatsoever. There really are only six for sure reliable, playable guys, like guys that for sure are going to be on the court, and that is the core four, Strus and Karis LeVert. Everyone else is kind of a question mark. Like Ricky Rubio, we don't know if he's going to play this season. Ty Jerome, I think, is a good signing as point guard insurance. He was good in the minutes he got with Golden State last year. Dean Wade was injured a lot, so it was hard for him to get in a good rhythm shooting wise. And then once again, another thing that the Cavs, well, I guess one thing that the Cavs did not address was their center depth. Besides having Mobley and Allen to play the center position, I mean, they got Damian Jones, which is okay, and then they just signed Tristan Thompson back a couple days ago, which is cool as a Cavs fan, but does he still have anything left in the tank? I mean, he did not play, he wasn't on a roster in the regular season last year and just signed with the Lakers at the end of the year and got in a little bit against Denver in the conference finals. But, I think that this is all going to hinge on Evan Mobley's offensive progression. We know how elite of a defender he is, becoming the youngest player to ever make the all-defensive team, and he was third in Defensive Player of the Year voting. I think that, it's all going to hinge on him. But I think that with these moves that they made, they definitely got better. And, 51 wins, if they win that's what they won last year. So, even if they're the same as last year or just a little bit better, that's over. So I'm taking over on the Cavs this season. I don't think that they're going to do anything crazy in the regular season as far as being like a 60-win team. I don't think any team in the East is going to win 60 games because of how close all the teams are. I mean, when you look at the East, really the only one that is like complete garbage that like I can't make a case for them to make the play-in this year would be the Wizards. Every other team I think has a chance. You could make a case at least that they are going to make the play-in. There's going to be a team down here that I think is going to be in the race for it, and then another team down there that I don't think will be at all just because of how close the East is, and I think they should keep rebuilding. But we'll get to that later. As far as the Cavaliers, I've got them on the over for this season. Detroit basketball is up next. The Pistons are at 28.5 wins. This is another, young rebuilding team in the Eastern Conference, one of those teams that I was, mentioning before. Now, I believe that this is a team that still needs to keep focusing on learning and development. I think that they have good, solid young players, but they haven't had the chance to really play together yet. Like, Kate Cunningham was injured for most of last year, so he didn't really get to gel with Jaden Ivey for Jalen Duren. You draft Osar Thompson this year. Um, and you have so many big men on this team. You got Jalen Duren, Marvin Bagley, James Wiseman, and Isaiah Stewart, all on this team. And on this current team, I would think that they would still want to start Bojan Bogdanovic at the power forward, which would mean that one of those solid young centers would not get to play, which is not fair to them, and they need to pick who they want to move forward with because all of them deserve a chance to play minutes right now and show what they can do, but that's not going to happen with this current roster. Someone who really deserves to play isn't going to get consistent minutes. Now, getting head coach Monty Williams, who's one of the best head coaches in the league, in my opinion, we saw that with the Suns' progression over the last few years. I think that he's going to be a great teacher for these young players, but not enough for them to win, too many games. I think that they still need to rebuild a little bit and look for some more wing players specifically, because right now you look at this team with their wings, it's like Alec Burks, Joe Harris, veterans that they have acquired over the last few years. So for the Pistons, I've got them on the under. I think they're going to be in the bottom of the Eastern Conference this year, but that doesn't mean that their future isn't still looking bright. It's just, like I said with the Cavs, like the East is really good, and some teams are going to still lose games and not make the jump that they may hope to take. On the other hand, we've got the Indiana Pacers at 38.5 wins, another team that missed the play-in, but made some good additions this offseason with Bruce Brown and Obi Toppin, alongside All-Star Tyrese Halliburton and one of the best rookies from last year, Benedict Mathurin, and of course, Miles Turner, veteran 3-and-D, 3-point shooter and shot blocking center with one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, in NBA history, really, and Buddy Hield. I think that these additions of Brown and Toppin should make this team a legit play-in contender this year. They were a very good offensive team when Tyrese Halliburton was in the lineup. When he was injured at the end of the year, they just fell and fell and fell. I mean, they really didn't have a chance after Halliburton got injured. But now with all these players that they've got, I am so excited to watch the Pacers this year. And as you could probably tell, I've got the Pacers on the over. I think that they are a legit play-in contender this year. I love what the Pacers have going on, and I'm super excited to see what they've got going on with, their young players. Of course, they drafted Jarris Walker too. Andrew Nembhard was good last year. They still have, they acquired Jordan Nwora from the Bucks last year. He was good for the Pacers down the stretch of the season. Jalen Smith, they still have guys with some good potential on this team as well. So I'm excited to see what happens for the Pacers, and I think enough can break for them as far as their roster to where they can make the plan. Now, the question for them is going to be perimeter defense, because Miles Turner is the only real defender on this team. Bruce Brown is a very good defender. He's a very good glue guy, for very good teams, as we saw with the Nets and the Nuggets last year. So we'll get to see how he can play in this one-year trial run where he's, making $21 million and going to have a bigger role. But the Pacers, I've got them on the over, and this is going to be one of my League Pass teams heading into this season because they are going to be so fun to watch on offense for sure. Now let's go to a team that definitely disappointed in the playoffs, and that is the Milwaukee Bucks. They are projected at 53.5 wins. The Bucks were the number one seed in the East and the whole league. They had the best record in the league last year, and they won one game in the first round against the Miami Heat, the 8th seed. And yes, Giannis was injured for the first basically 2.5 games. I mean, he didn't get through he got injured in the first quarter of the first game. And, when Giannis came back, I expected the Bucks to then roll, take that series. But, they blew back-to-back big fourth quarter leads, and it was very, very disappointing. Now, they did not get better this offseason either. They lost some key rotational players. Some of them, did have, something to do with them losing that series. But I do have to preface that signing Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez back were huge for that team, because if they didn't go back, you could definitely make the case that the Bucks or lower one tier from the top, and I think that they're still one of the favorites to come out of the East. But not making any huge improvements besides signing like Malik Beasley. I mean, that's really all you got. You got more 3-point shooting, which is always good to have around Giannis Antetokounmpo. But like, yeah, I mean, the only other they signed Robin Lopez for the locker room. I mean, there's nothing else that the Bucks did this offseason. So in order for them to gear up for the playoffs, I think that they're going to win less than 53 and a half games. They might go right at 53, which could still be the 1 seed. A couple years ago, Miami was the number 1 seed in the East with 53 wins. So it's definitely still possible. It's definitely possible and maybe more likely that they win more games. Just because it's the Bucks, it's Giannis. Giannis is still a top player in the league. Drew Holiday is one of the best defenders in the league. Chris Middleton was injured for basically all of last year until the playoffs. And Brook Lopez was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. So they still have a very good, roster up top. But I definitely can see a world where they step back to try to gear up for the playoffs. And that's what I'm going to predict them to do. I think they're going to win a little bit less games so that they can gear up for the playoffs. So that way they don't have a repeat of last year. And that is the Central Division. That is all those teams. Once again, please leave a comment with what you guys think about my opinions on these 5 teams. I'm definitely interested to hear what you guys think. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe for more NBA content. I'm your host, Miles. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.